Everyone says they want consistent sales, freedom from launch stress, income that doesn't depend on how on they are every single day. But here's the question most people skip. Are you actually ready to scale? Because scaling isn't about adding automation or building a funnel. It's about whether your business can hold consistent sales without you being the system. Over the last 3 episodes, we've talked about the new era of selling, why trust converts better than pressure, and why presence alone eventually hits a ceiling. Today, we're pulling all of that together. In this episode, I'm walking you through 5 sales readiness checkpoints, not to overwhelm you, but to help you see exactly what's working, what's missing, and what needs to be in place before you try to grow bigger. You're listening to the From Scratch podcast, the podcast for bold entrepreneurs who are done with cookie cutter advice, done with burnout, and done with building businesses that don't actually feel good. I'm your host, Kary, a near $1 million course creator, brand strategist, and business coach for women who are ready to do it differently. 7 years ago, I hit a level of success and still ended up crying on the bathroom floor. So trust me when I say starting from scratch isn't about starting over. It's about taking your power back and rebuilding on your own terms. Every week, you'll get unfiltered stories, bold strategies, and the mindset shifts you need to build with soul, sell with strategy, and grow something that feels like you. So let's get into it. If selling in this new era is about connection, clarity, and systems that support real life, then scaling isn't something you force. It's something you prepare for. Most people try to scale by asking, how do I sell more? But that question skips the real issue, because selling more isn't the same as sustaining sales. The better question is, what needs to be true psychologically, structurally, and emotionally for sales to happen consistently without me pushing them every time? That's what these 5 checkpoints are designed to reveal. Think of this episode as a diagnostic. Not a judgment, not a scorecard, just clarity. Because gaps don't mean you're behind. They tell you exactly where leverage is missing. And leverage is what creates scale. A few years ago, I remember standing in front of a closet full of clothes thinking, I have nothing to wear. No, seriously, who hasn't been there? Not because I didn't own enough, but because nothing worked together. Pieces I loved, things that fit one season of my life but not the next. Items that made sense on their own but not as a whole. And the problem wasn't the clothes, it was the lack of structure. No core pieces, no foundation, no sense of how things were meant to work together. That's exactly what happens in business when you try to scale without readiness. You don't need more offers, more content, more tactics. You need cohesion. And these checkpoints are what create it. Checkpoint number 1, message precision. Do buyers recognize themselves immediately? This checkpoint tests whether your messaging is doing the identity work required for a buying decision. Before a buyer evaluates your offer, they are subconsciously asking one question. Is this about me? If the answer isn't immediately clear, the brain stays in assessment mode. This is where many well-meaning brands get stuck. They lead with expertise, inspiration, or outcomes, assuming that clarity will come later. But the human brain doesn't move forward without first feeling seen. From a sales psychology standpoint, this matters because buying requires self-identification. If someone cannot locate their current reality inside your messaging, their nervous system treats the offer as uncertain. Uncertainty increases perceived risk, and risk delays decisions. This is why broad or aspirational messaging tends to attract engagement but stall conversion. People can admire a message without entering it. What converts is specificity, not just about the result, but about the moment before the result. The frustration, the looping thoughts, the quiet concern they haven't said out loud. When messaging skips that, buyers remain observers instead of participants. In my business, there was a season where trust and engagement were high, but decisions felt slow. When I audited my messaging, I realized it centered on what I knew rather than what they were living with. Once my message consistently reflected their current reality, not just my expertise, hesitation dropped. Because clarity reduces perceived risk. When people recognize themselves, they self-qualify. And self-qualification creates confident yeses. So here's your move. Take one core offer and write 3 sentences. 1, this is for someone who feels, even though they've already tried. 2, they're tired of and quietly worried that. And 3, what changes is this. Now use that language in the first paragraph of your sales page, the hook of a reel or a podcast intro, the opening line of an email. If someone can't tell immediately that this is for them, their brain won't progress, no matter how valuable the offer is. Checkpoint 2, trust consistency. Does belief compound when you're not there? This checkpoint evaluates whether trust is being built systematically or only in moments of presence. Most people think trust is created through intensity, strong lives, emotional posts, powerful launches, but intensity doesn't scale. Consistency does. From a buyer psychology perspective, trust isn't built by one convincing moment. It's built by repeated confirmation. The brain is constantly scanning for stability. Does this message stay the same? Does this belief hold up over time? Does this feel familiar even when I step away? When trust only exists while you are visible, the moment you go quiet, the buyer's nervous system re-enters evaluation mode. Familiarity fades, doubt creeps in, and the hesitation returns. This is why so many businesses experience sales drops the second they stop actively selling. Trust that converts at scale is ambient. It exists whether you are present or not. Consistency creates familiarity. Familiarity creates calm. Calm reduces resistance, and reduced resistance leads to decisions. This is also why repetition is not redundant, it's regulating. In my business, trust deepened when people encountered the same core beliefs across long-form content, emails, and offers. They didn't just recognize my name, they felt oriented inside my perspective. That orientation made decisions feel safer because trust wasn't tied to my presence. It was embedded in the experience. So here's your move. Choose one core belief your audience must hold before buying. For an example, selling doesn't require presence. Systems can still feel personal. Consistency doesn't require constant visibility. Then reinforce that belief in 2 social media posts, 1 email, 1 sales page section, different stories, same belief. That's how trust compounds quietly, even when you're not actively selling. Checkpoint 3, directional clarity. Is there an obvious next step? This checkpoint tests whether interest is being contained or allowed to leak. Interest alone does not create movement. Movement requires orientation. From a sales psychology standpoint, uncertainty doesn't feel neutral to the brain. It feels unsafe. When someone is interested but unsure what to do next, their nervous system doesn't stay curious, it goes into pause. This is where most businesses unintentionally stall their audience. Here's what's actually happening. Your content is doing its job. It's creating resonance, but the buyer's brain is asking a different question than you think. Not, do I like this, but what happens next? When that answer isn't obvious, the brain defaults to delay. Delay feels responsible. Delay feels low risk. Delay feels like, I'll come back later. And later almost never comes. Directional clarity isn't about being pushy. It's about reducing decision friction. When direction is clear, the brain expends less energy deciding, confidence increases, and follow-through becomes easier. Without it, even highly engaged audiences remain passive. In my business, momentum shifted when I stopped assuming people would connect the dots on their own. Once I intentionally designed what happened after interest, where people went, what they experienced, and how that led to a decision, conversions increased without pressure because guidance removes cognitive load, and reduced cognitive load increases action. So here's your move. Map this on paper. 1, how someone finds you, reel, podcast, post. 2, where they go next, email list, training, resource. 3, what that prepares them for, offer, program, decision. Then audit your content honestly. Are you naming the next step clearly? Are you offering too many paths at once? Are you assuming readiness instead of supporting it? Choose one primary next step and reference it consistently for the next 30 days. Checkpoint 4, system support. Can sales happen without you initiating them? This checkpoint tests whether your business has leverage or dependency. Here's the hard truth. If sales only happen when you are actively selling, you don't have a sales system. You have a performance model. Performance models depend on energy, visibility, timing, emotional availability, and those things are not scalable. Buyers do not decide on your schedule. They decide when internal readiness clicks. That moment often happens after consuming multiple pieces of content, during quiet reflection, when doubt finally resolves, when belief outweighs fear. If there is no structure in place to support that moment, the decision doesn't happen. Not because they said no, but because there was nothing to catch the yes. This is where systems matter psychologically, not just operationally. A system answers questions before they surface, reinforces belief before doubt gains momentum, and creates continuity when you are offline. That's what makes sales feel steady instead of spiky. In my business, sales stabilized when I stopped tying outcomes to real-time effort. Questions were answered before they were asked. Beliefs were reinforced before hesitation set in. Structure carried conversations forward without me initiating every step. That shift didn't remove my voice. It protected it. Effort creates spikes. Infrastructure creates consistency. So here's your move. Identify one sales moment that currently depends on you. DMs, live launches, sales calls. Then write down the top 5 questions you answer, the reassurance you give, and the belief you reinforce. Now build one asset that handles that moment for you. An email sequence, a training, a guide, or a page. Build once, let it do the work repeatedly. Checkpoint 5, capacity readiness. With growth creates stability or strain. This final checkpoint evaluates whether your business can hold more sales without creating internal pressure. Most people assume sales automatically equal more freedom, but sales without capacity don't feel like success. They feel like obligation. From a belief standpoint, this is where subconscious resistance often lives. If your nervous system associates growth with overwhelm, pressure, loss of flexibility, emotional depletion, you will unconsciously cap your own sales. This is not a mindset failure. It's a capacity mismatch. True scale happens when growth is absorbed by structure, not transferred into the person. Capacity readiness means delivery is clear and repeatable, boundaries are defined, expectations are set, and decisions don't require constant emotional labor. When it isn't, growth feels threatening. In my business, scale became sustainable when the system absorbed the demand instead of pushing it back onto me. Sales didn't add urgency, they added predictability. And that's the difference between expansion that feels aligned and expansion that feels heavy. Scale should reduce stress, not amplify it. So here's your move. Ask yourself honestly, if sales doubled next month, what would break first? Where would I feel stretched emotionally or logistically? What would require clearer boundaries or support? That answer isn't a red flag. It's your next build. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this episode, it's this. Readiness isn't about being perfect. It's about being prepared. These 5 checkpoints aren't hoops to jump through. They're signals. They show you where sales already want to happen and where structure, clarity, or belief needs to catch up. Because inconsistent sales are rarely a motivation problem. They're rarely a visibility problem. And they're almost never a you're not good enough problem. They're a readiness problem. When your message helps buyers recognize themselves, decisions feel safer. When trust compounds without your constant pressure, hesitation quiets. When direction is clear, interest turns into movement. When systems support the moment of decision, sales stop depending on your energy. And when capacity is designed intentionally, growth feels stabilizing instead of heavy. Scaling isn't about doing more, it's about removing friction. It's about building a business that can carry belief, momentum, and decisions forward, even when you step back. So instead of asking, how do I sell more? Ask yourself, which checkpoint deserves my attention right now? Because that's not a gap. That's your next level asking to be built. And the most powerful thing you can do from here is stop trying to push growth and start preparing for it. Before you go, I need to tell you about something you absolutely do not want to miss. On Wednesday, February 18th, I'm hosting a live sales masterclass called Sales on Repeat. And this is not a fluffy webinar or recycled workshop. This is a deep dive into how high-income businesses are actually selling in 2026. We're talking about how to create demand without being always on, how to build trust that converts even when you're offline, how to move from inconsistent effort-based sales to a real system that supports your income, your energy, and your life. We're talking about the exact system behind my near $1 million business. So if you're selling a course, program, or membership and you're tired of wondering where the next sale will come from or feeling like everything depends on you showing up more, this training is for you. Inside this live masterclass, I'm breaking down what actually sells now and what doesn't anymore, how to build a trust-based sales system that works on repeat, and the exact shifts that took me from small, unpredictable months to consistent, high-income sales. This is live, it's strategic, and it's the kind of training that changes how you think about selling entirely. So if you want sales that feel calmer, smarter, and more sustainable, and you want to learn directly from me live, go sign up right now. The link is in the show notes. Save your spot, and I'll see you on Wednesday, February 18th. Trust me, you're going to want to be in the room for this one.